looking for healthier, fuller hair? Do you want extra money for bills, trips, extracurricular activities for your kids, or do you want to replace your entire income? Monat is the answer. Our products are Leaping Bunny certified, vegan, and Monat can be used by anyone, including your kids and pets. Message me on my Instagram to partner with me. Founder shares are available, and as a market partner, you have access to uncapped bonuses, 45% commission, 35 to 55% off discounts, on top of all-inclusive paid trips. Right now, I also have a free gift for anyone that partners with me, so don't miss out. You can message me on my Instagram at LizChilvers87.
We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today. Good morning, bright and early this morning, and reuniting Supermac and Gibbo after the summer sabbatical. How are you, lads?
All right.
Very good.
Not
Nice.
bad, Steve, at all.
Nice to be a trio again.
It is good to see you both, and plenty to talk about on the Newcastle United beat today. And I think we'll start with England first, though, Malcolm. And it's not coming home, Malcolm. Unfortunately, England again slipping up at the final stage, and Gareth Southgate falling on his sword and putting his letter of notice in. How do you feel about all of that with England?
Well, firstly, the opening games that England played in, I thought they were absolutely dreadful. And they were sitting back in such defensive posture. It just didn't make any sense to me whatsoever. When you saw Declan Rice, he was almost sitting between the two centre halves, for heaven's sake, and he's more wanting to get forward, wanting to attack, and didn't see him hardly cross the halfway line. It improved very slightly in the semi-final, and they didn't do so bad in the final. But I thought that Spain, from the very first game that I saw them play, they were outstanding. The one truly outstanding side, and they made everybody look pretty average, and so. I was very disappointed in the end. And also, I did not understand just quite what Southgate was attempting to do with some of his team selections. It was all beyond me. His tactics, his selections, it just wasn't making sense to me. And I can well imagine that the people in the FA were scratching their heads saying, what the hell is the man doing? I think he's right to fall on his sword. But what I would say is, because I'm sure that we're going to get onto the situation of, well, who's going to replace him? And
we will. Yeah, we will come to that.
All right, I'll leave that one until it arises. But I looked at the England squad looked at other squads of the major nations there, and I thought, well, England they've got just about the strongest side, the strongest squad in the competition. And some of the great players in the squad just weren't showing, they weren't playing. And all I can put it down to was the tactics or lack of them, should I say, that so many just didn't show. Some of the midfield was absolutely awful. Foden, good Lord, he disappeared for most of the tournament, and I could not understand why Southgate refused to play Gordon. He came on, I think it was in the third qualifying game. He came on for the last 3-4 minutes. And for the first time, an England player went and past the fullback, past the defender, and he got in behind. And nobody else had done that. Nobody had even looked to do it. And I was really, really disappointed in the England side. But I was baffled by Gareth Southgate. I don't know whether he was leaving Gordon out purposely because of the situation that had been going on, and obviously word had got to Gordon in terms of a possible transfer with a club trying to level things up financially so that they weren't further punished. But I can't believe that would have impaired him on the pitch. I really can't. So why Southgate failed to play Gordon, I really do not know. And now that he's left the job, he can't be asked the question, can he?
No, definitely not. John, disappointing because ultimately, we did get to the final. We did have that lucky draw, if you like, an easy path to the final. We made hard work of it at times, but we got there. We got to the final again, and that in itself was something that lifted the whole country. You've got people who sometimes don't even watch football, interested in football. But
shame it didn't lift the team.
Yeah, it didn't. But what? Put your finger on it, John. Why didn't England bring it home this time round?
Well, that's a great question, and you will end up with the manager, because that's where the buck stops. And as Malcolm alluded to, we had a very good squad that didn't perform. A good squad on paper didn't perform on the pitch. And for me, the writing was on the wall, and it was all going to end in tears when Gareth Southgate went over to the crowd at the group stage, started clapping the crowd, and they pelted him with plastic cups. He was asked about it afterwards, what the problem was, and he said, the problem's me, and I don't know what I can do about it. In other words, he resigned at that moment. Unless England won the whole competition, in which case he may well have stayed on because he would have been hailed a hero and probably given a knighthood. And then he's drummed out of the job the next second. But to me, when you say that and when you get that reaction from the fans to the way you're playing, then the inevitable is going to happen. And I think what Southgate has done well, in fairness to him, is resign quickly after he came back. Because once he came back, all the feel-good factor of England are in a final again, so the manager must be super-duper because he's got us there again. He got us there 3 years ago at Wembley against Italy, and the feel-good factor and the drums started beating. It all evaporated with that display, very much second best against Spain. And then the truth was beginning to come out in the papers, on the press, on the television, fan forums, sort of saying, hey, this guy's too negative, etc. Now that was going to build and build and build and build. What Gareth did was he quickly realised, speaking to his family back home, etc., that there's no way I'm going to be accepted by the crowd. There's no way I can stay on and sign a new contract because I'm going to put myself through hell. And he resigned with dignity in a very emotional statement about how it's been the love of his life, England, as a player and a manager. And what happened? In one fell swoop, he restored his reputation. Everybody's remembering now that he is truly a nice man with great dignity who wanted to be successful. So he's killed off all the nastiness, all the poison and whatever by falling on his sword and saying how much it's been a privilege to have the job he had. And he stopped it all. There was no way, when you caught him after he was pelted with the plastic cups, he was haggard. He was a beaten man. And no one would want to face that again. And he did not want to face that again. The only way he was going to not fall on his sword is if we had won the title with some conviction. We didn't do that. Now, it is true that he's a thoroughly nice man and that he has lifted us from being ragtag and bobtail and stupid and the Wally with the volley, which was McLaren, and Turnip Head, which was Taylor. We got rid of all that and got a bit of dignity back. But what we also got was a very boring side, a very, very boring side. And you know what? Was it a real surprise that we lost the final? Spain had beaten Germany, the hosts. They'd beaten Italy, the champions. They'd beaten France, very much fancied. So they were going to beat England. We'd beaten Slovakia and Slovenia and whoever. There was no comparison. It's all right, people saying, well, we made the final again. Look at the opposition. No wonder we made the final. Stevie Wonder's Showbiz 11 could have made the final. But the minute we played a good side, we were second best. And I think Gareth has done exactly the right thing to resign because he can't, King Canute couldn't turn the tide, and neither can Gareth Southgate. He did the right thing to get out, but not to wait a month and then get out and let all the speculation go on. He's got out with dignity, and he deserves that dignity because he's a decent guy. But he's not front foot; he's handbrake, and with the talent he's got, he should never attempt to be handbrake.
Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Can I just make comment to some of the texts that are coming in with regards to Klopp being the man that people are suggesting to take over from Southgate? If he didn't want to continue with Liverpool, why would he want to take the England job on? It just doesn't. It wouldn't make sense to me at all.
So the next manager is going to be very important because people want. It's clear fans, we've heard them, want entertaining football. So Klopp's name's going to get thrown into that because he had a very entertaining team at Liverpool. But the early front runners, Mal, as we all know now, are the person who I think will get the job is Potter. I think he's turned back so many jobs, 5 or 6 jobs in the last 12 months, and I still think he's an FA man. I think he's the kind of person who'll get a shoe in. Lee Carsley, of course, who's the under-21s manager, and Eddie Howe will always be linked with the England job because of his success. Inverted commas, he hasn't won anything, but he's done well at Newcastle. So
it's the last job that Eddie Howe wants or needs. It really is. Here's a question for you, and I'm going back now to Sir Walter Winterbottom, who I remember as the first manager coach of England. Since Walter Winterbottom in the 50s, tell me an English manager who has got a job with a club, a manager's job with a club after he left the England job.
Alfonsi.
No, he didn't. No, he didn't manage.
He managed Birmingham City after England.
Oh yes, yeah. I beg your pardon. He did. You're right.
And Bobby Robson.
Yeah, and then he became a director, didn't he, at the club?
Bobby Robson managed Barcelona and everybody, including us, after England.
Yes, but okay, so there's two exceptions, but there have been loads and loads and loads of managers. What I'm trying to say is that you take the England job, and it's very, very rare to get a job afterwards as a manager in this country. Very rare indeed. You know, when we're going back to the 50s here, John, that's sort of 75 years ago, and you've been able to name two managers.
Sure.
What do you think about the link with Howe then, Malcolm? You know, Eddie Howe, you're saying it's the last job he wants, but you know, you would imagine England are going to come calling.
Why would he want the England job with all the frailties that we've seen Southgate suffer when he is well and truly ensconced in the Newcastle situation, and the world could be Newcastle's oyster over the next decade and more. Why would he want to leave that and take on the England job? Because apart from anything else, remember that it's not day to day. And that suited Southgate. I knew him, and I talked to people at Middlesbrough when he was the manager there. And he wasn't a tracksuit man out on the pitch, out on the training pitch, coaching players every single day of the week. He wasn't like that at all. And so he would spend a lot of time as the England manager in an office, and that suited Southgate. That is not Eddie Howe, that's for sure. Not him at all. And I know there's kudos to it, but you've also got to look at your own future and what do you want to do. And Eddie Howe, he will get more success with Newcastle United than ever he could get as England manager.
Certainly, if he wants to win trophies, and you've got to think that he does. Yes, he won divisions with Bournemouth, but not major trophies like the Premier League or the FA Cup or the League Cup. So he's still after his first major trophy. At Newcastle, for example, in the coming season, he's got two great tilts at a trophy in the FA Cup and the League Cup. After that, you're in the season after next, hopefully he'll be in four competitions: the League Cup, the FA Cup, the Premier League, in Europe. So, and if you're with England, you play in the World Cup every 4 years, the Europeans every 4 years.
Yes.
So you play every 2 years. The rest of the time you play friendlies or qualifiers.
Yes.
You know, it's not the same. I think he is absolutely a standout. I take Potter as well, Steve, but he's a standout candidate for the England job. He ticks every single box apart from one, and that's our box. And apart from one, and I believe it'll be his box, I think it's too early for him. I think he would like it, and at 56, I think he would probably jump at it. You know, having won things with Newcastle United, etc., etc. But does he need it now? The interesting thing, guys, is that, as we know, Darren Eales spoke very eloquently yesterday or the day before about all sorts of things Newcastle United, which included the fact that the club would vigorously react to any approach by England for him, and that he signed this new contract, which was never been announced, which is a rolling contract, which is given much longer time here. The interesting thing, guys, it's very easy to turn down a job when you've never been offered it. You know, Eddie Howe says, I don't want the England job. Well, you haven't been offered the England job. Wait until he's offered the England job. Wait until Eales gets a knock on the door and the FA say the compensation we'll pay is such and such. Let them then turn it down. And I hope they will. The interesting thing, guys, is that Darren Eales, having spoken about that and many other things on a Zoom call from Germany 48 hours ago, Eddie Howe is on a Zoom call from Germany with the press tomorrow between 12 noon and 2:30. He's not on for the whole time. There's players coming on before him straight after training at the pre-season camp in Germany, and then he will talk. Now, his talk is going to be dominated by questions about England, much more than it is about questions about Newcastle United, although it's one and the same thing to a great extent. And I think he will reiterate that Newcastle United is concentrating solely 100% on that, on getting them trained for the pre-season, on who will sign, etc., etc. That and therefore we will be reassured. But as I say, it's easy to turn down the job when you haven't been offered it. The hard bits to turn down the job when you're offered it. And I think, like Malcolm, I think the timing is wrong for England from Eddie Howe's point of view. It's obviously hugely wrong from our point of view, but I think it's wrong from Eddie Howe's point of view. I think it's wrong timing. I think it's 10 years down the road for Eddie. I think he'll want to stay here. He'll want to win things. For example, I mean, he's such a dedicated 24-hour a day manager that he has meetings with Darren Eales, Newcastle United meetings, at 7 o'clock in the morning. He gets to the training ground at 6:30 and tells Darren to come in at 7 so they can have a meeting, and he's still here for training. Now, with England, half the time you haven't got meetings at all, never mind at 7 o'clock every morning, because it's a part. England is effectively a part-time job. It's a part-time manager's job. The rest of the time, you're travelling all over the country, sitting in dusty stands, watching players who, within 5 minutes, is not good enough to play for England.
Sure, and all over the world, John, in terms of watching opposition.
I think the interest's genuine. I think he's perfect for England, but it's not perfect for Newcastle United. And we will, Steve, be hearing his side of the story tomorrow lunchtime.
Well, hoping it gets put to bed. Lots of people agreeing with Malcolm's overall point. The England job's a poison chalice, but he would have achieved a lifelong goal by becoming England manager. Dean felt it was a bit naive. He says there is pull with the England manager's job because of the current squad that we've got. There's that kind of, that kind of carrot in front of an England manager to be equal with Sir Ralph Ramsey in '66, I guess, the next tournament being the World Cup. So I guess some people agree with you in some sense, but it's that fear, Malcolm, that people have of Eddie Howe potentially going. And Les says, why would Eddie not get another chance to manage England at a later date? He's relatively young. He's shown consistent professional development as a manager. His time will come, just not now. And Darren says the only downside for waiting for the England job, it might be 8 years till he gets another chance. For Howe, says Darren, if he doesn't get it now and waits another 8 years, it puts him closer to 60. So in the terms of offered, he might not take it. So lots of opinions about it, Malcolm.
Yeah, of course there is. But like John was saying, that it's pretty much a part-time job. It's and it's completely different to club management. Totally different. And it's better suited to an older man. When you're as young as Eddie Howe is, you England is not the job for you. Certainly it needs experience, a lot of experience. And when you think that the best England manager I played under was Alf Ramsey, and he had won the First Division Championship with Ipswich. And then he was offered the England job and he took it. That I can understand. And if Eddie Howe is going to be a name of interest to the FA, then he for his own personal situation, he needs to go and win something with Newcastle before he moves on, takes the England job or whatever. And it's all going to be very, very possible over the next few years.
I honestly think, guys, as well, just playing devil's advocate here, if you've got to be careful what you wish for, because Kevin Keegan was manager of Newcastle United, never been a manager in his life before. He come in, he built the entertainers, he took Newcastle from the brink of the third division to runners up in the Premier League. He did a magnificent job under Sir John Hall. Now, he never had a job as good as that again. He managed England later, and he managed Fulham and Manchester City, and he never had a job as good as the Newcastle United job. And Eddie Howe may never have a job as good as the one he's got at the moment. Yes. Because it is terrific, and he's got all the money that he needs in the transfer market once we get around financial fair play or it gets effectively ditched. And he's got a great understanding. His players absolutely adore him. The fans absolutely adore him. The board absolutely adore him. And that was the situation with Keegan. And yet he walked out on it. And you know what? At club or country level, he never found that again. He never found that love, that affection, he was on a roll, but of course he felt he could walk on water, and it just didn't happen. So Eddie's got to be careful that he doesn't walk out on the best job he'll ever have and go to one that perhaps isn't so rosy. If I was him, and I'm not, and it's down to him, but if I was him, I would stay where I am, because England will always be there. And England will always be there.
Sure. And
by the way, he'll have so much better chance to get it. Sorry, Malcolm. He'll have so much better chance to get the England job the next time if he's won trophies at Newcastle.
Yeah.
He'll be a shoe-in for it then.
Sure. Absolutely. I'm just going back to that last text that was there. Can we go there? The most recent World Cup winning manager is the same age as Eddie Howe, but that's abroad. That's in another country, and the whole situation of how football is organised is totally different in most of the European countries to what we know here. When you think that the German league and the German FA, they are full of ex-players, absolutely full. Beckenbauer, good heavens, he became the chairman of the German FA, didn't he?
Yeah.
If memory serves, yes. Can you imagine Bobby Moore having done that? No. Nobody was interested in him. He had the most fantastic playing record, and he was able, and the only opportunity he got in the game was to manage Southend for a while, and so we view the whole of this international management and club management. We view it differently to how it is viewed and operated over in Europe and indeed in other areas of the world. And for some reason, managers, after they've taken the England job, they have great difficulty in continuing a career. And John, you mentioned those the two that were the exceptions to the rule. And Bobby Robson was somebody absolutely special. But the vast majority of England managers, once they had left that job, never got a job.
Okay.
And I was going to say that I saw a thing about Southgate being linked with the Manchester United job.
Yeah.
And I thought, he's the last person in the world that Man United need.
No, get him there. Get him there. We want him there.
Yes, I'm all for that. Eddie stays here. Southgate goes to Manchester United.
And get Steve Bruce in. Get Steve Bruce in. He's a huge Man United fan. I've
just been waiting for that. I think the job's made for Steve. I think he would absolutely take the England job and be a front foot manager with tremendous tactical knowledge, who would take us to wonderful heights and make us all rue the day that he left Newcastle United.
It would be like Mike Bassett with a packet of cigarettes. Anyway, it's time for the ads.
A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. You can find their website at skipsandbins.com. Contact us www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low cost waste disposal with pay as you go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to United Group Travel. They are the Travel and Tourism Award winners in 2024. Their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts. You can find them at www.media-arts.co.uk. And don't forget, we are a podcast. You can find us on iTunes or Spotify or other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel grow, then hit the like button, the little thumb underneath the video, click share and share to your social media, or join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to take out a one-off payment membership, go to nufcmatters.com and hit membership. And for a £25 fee, you get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. You can also put a smartphone over the top of this QR code. It'll take you straight there. And don't forget, we also help the food bank on this channel. nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is a website where you can make a virtual donation today.
And don't forget, Gibbo is on at the Gateshead Leisure Centre on the 2nd of August with Rob Lee. Tickets available at gatesheadleisurecentre.co.uk. All right, back to the debates that we have about Newcastle United and Amanda Staveley and Mirdad Garusi Malcolm no longer at the club. Shares have been sold. The Reuben brothers now have slightly more and PIF have slightly more. It was a bit of a shock, Malcolm, I think, for everybody concerned. Nobody really saw it coming. I know there'd been a little bit of movement of shares backwards and forwards here and there, but it was certainly a story which broke. And I don't think I've probably seen as much outpouring of emotion from supporters, genuine emotion, since probably Kevin Keegan left. And I find it strange for people who came in and just, facilitated the deal of the club, because usually it's players and managers you get close to. But yeah, Amanda and Mirdad really did have a big effect at the club, Malcolm. And obviously they've gone with the club's best wishes. We've heard from both sides now. Doesn't seem to be any animosity. So yeah, it's a strange one, because now it puts us in a position where we have to rely on Darren Eales to come out and be the face of Newcastle United.
Yeah, the whole thing really took me by surprise. As you say, it was the last thing that I think any of us expected. And I'm very, very sorry to see her go, because I think that she was absolutely brilliant. When you think that it was she who sort of took over the reins from the 14 years of management by Sports Direct, Mike Ashley in particular, and it was, everything was being done for Sports Direct, not for Newcastle United, and she turned the whole thing round in very short time, and I think that she was absolutely brilliant. Her PR was first class, and her husband, Mirdad, and I'm very, very sorry to see them go, but it seems that it was all amicable. I'm not so sure that it might be amicable within the boardroom, but I don't think that she would be happy to actually be leaving, because I think that she so enjoyed what she was doing here and seeing and meeting all of the Newcastle supporters and what have you, and getting praise from them, because they had seen this club completely turn a corner thanks to her, and everybody appreciated it, and she certainly appreciated it and enjoyed that. And I'm so quite how now with where we're going to find that sort of front person that that Amanda was, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see as to what happens. But I feel very sad that she's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same way. I think she was the best PR we've had since Kevin Keegan, who was terrific at PR, and Amanda was terrific at PR. I mean, now the dust is settled, and the two statements have been made by both sides, which really give away nothing but just pay tribute to one another, and that's thoroughly understandable. I think now the dust is settled, though, I think two significant things played a part in Amanda and her husband leaving. The first is that when she first took over the job, Newcastle had nobody in place because the whole thing was a shambles after Mike Ashley. Behind the scenes was a shambles. Charnley was going to go very quickly, and we had no real structure, power base at the club behind the managerial situation. So she filled that void, and she was that power base. She not only did the PR, she did the negotiations that helped us get Howe, that helped us get Bruno and Trips, that she represented us at the Premier League meetings. But ironically, she was a great recruiter as well as a great PR. And as we got bricks put into place with the appointment of Darren Eales and Dan Ashworth, followed by the new guy, Mitchell, and other people behind the scenes, her role got slightly smaller and less necessary because she had put into place the structure that was needed. So I think that she was probably under the impression when she first came in and facilitated the deal that it was going to be relatively short term with her, because she hadn't the cash to do the deal herself. She had to find the big hitters. She's rich by the standards of us three sitting here, but she ain't rich by the standards of the Saudis or the Rubens, if it comes to that. And what then happened, I think, apart from the fact that the need for her, and I do think there's a PR situation still there, but the need for her behind the scenes with everybody else put in place becomes slightly less and less. Then, because Newcastle aren't a self-sufficient club financially, they will be eventually, but they weren't making money under Ashley because there was no attempt to make money under Ashley. And so we're building up, but we'll build up slowly. And we're not anywhere near being self-sufficient like Manchester City or Arsenal or whoever. So every now and again, the owners have to dip in their own pockets to keep Newcastle afloat while sponsorships and various other things come through. Now, that was easy for the Saudis and is easy for the Saudis because they're super rich. By British standard, the Reuben brothers, of which son Jamie fronts, are super rich. Not in the Saudi class, but super rich. So when the Saudis put in some money, the Reubens could match it. Amanda couldn't. Every time they've had a dip into their pockets, Amanda hasn't been able to put in the same amount of money as the Saudis and the Reubens. And that's why her 10% becomes 6%, become 4%, and the other percentages went up. And the Reubens has gone up very small every time. And they've bought a bit of this, the same as the Saudis has. Amanda couldn't keep pace with the financial demands. She also had complications, of course, where she was appearing in court, nothing to do with Newcastle United, but privately over businesses which were going to stretch her finances. She wasn't capable of keeping stride alongside the Rubens and the Saudis in the increase. So she was slowly going down, slowly going down, slowly going down. And she had brought in her own replacements, if you like, with Darren Eales and everybody else that's come into place. And so it's changed. But we will be forever thankful for the job her and her husband did, because we wouldn't be sitting where we are today without them. Because if they hadn't facilitated the change that brought the Saudis in and had been so persistent in waiting for the Premier League to see sense and allow this to happen, we wouldn't be where we are. As far as the new face is concerned, and I had great concern about what we do now that we've lost the PR of Amanda. I think Darren Eales is going to be that face, and I think he spoke very eloquently on the subject from Germany in the last 48 hours when he talked about the future of Eddie Howe, when he talked about the ground, and he talked about the buying of players and the keeping of the blue chip players we've got. I thought he was very, very eloquent on that. And he has a background of doing that at Atlanta in America, where he used to go out and meet the fans out there and build the club up till it was the most vibrant club in American soccer. So he's got that background. I think Darren Eales will be thrust forward as the man to replace Amanda in being the public face. And of course, Jamie Rubin will be the public face as well on match days in the boardroom. So I think that's how it'll pan out in the future. But yes, I mean, Amanda's been wonderful, and it's quite staggering to think that a member of the board of Newcastle United could actually be adored by fans. I mean, you know, if things go right, it's down to the manager, and if things go wrong, it's down to the board. But here's a member of the board that's adored. I mean, you know, Lord Westwood, Gordon McTeague, Alderman William McTeague, Mike Ashley must be wondering what the hell's gone on up here.
So John Hall didn't do so bad, though, John.
No, he didn't. But then, no, he didn't, and quite rightly so. But I think it got slightly tarnished the end of that reign, because once he went, I don't think that the two people that came in and ran it then, Freddie and his son Douglas, quite kept it at the same level. And you know, it wasn't. It's sad, because what John did for Newcastle was absolutely phenomenal. But it is tainted a tad with some fans. Amanda, it's wall-to-wall love.
Sure, yes, yeah, but you know, I know that Sir John, he sort of really made Newcastle turn one hell of a corner, but I think so did Amanda. That she sort of equaled it. If for nothing else, just getting rid of Mike Ashley.
Oh, that alone, we will be in a debt forever for that alone.
Yes.
I mean, that was enough. I mean, she could be getting carried shoulder high out of the ground for that, and for that alone. And and good on her. And she goes with our thanks. And just think about it, Guy. If her and hubby turn up mid-season to watch a match at Newcastle United with a black and white scarves on in the director's box, they'll bring the house down.
Yeah.
Standing ovation.
They deserve it. I mean, I do think they should have that opportunity to come out and walk onto the pitch one last time and just to say thank you and goodbye. I think that would be almost called for. And Les, I suspect War Flags will have an epic display for Amanda and Mirdad come our first home fixture, and it'll be well deserved. Obviously, yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah, but I really do think that that Amanda and her husband Mirdad, they must have been very sad to leave, because apart from anything, I think they enjoyed so much all that they were doing with the club.
They were the perfect front people, because when you've got owners like the Saudis, when you've got owners like Abramovich was at Chelsea, they are faceless owners. You rarely see them. They rarely speak. You'll get the odd official statement, you know, like you did from our chairman when Amanda went. But you never get him in front of the cameras talking to the punters and etc. or at a press conference. And that's okay. It's the modern way. Abramovich never did that, but he was half successful. He changed the manager as much as he changed his underpants, but they kept winning. But they kept winning trophies. they kept winning trophies, so it didn't matter. It was quite unbelievable, wasn't it? And the silent assassin was just sitting there in the background saying no. But they were successful and have been a lot less successful since he's disappeared. But when you've got owners like the Saudis, you need somebody to do the PR. You need somebody to talk to the fans. Amanda was perfect. And I think it'll be down to Darren Eales now. And I thought he was very eloquent this week, so I've got hope that he will do that job quite well. I know that he did it in Atlanta and was well liked by the fans over there. And the good thing with Darren is, because what we've said as well, Steve, is that Eddie Howe, they're trying to think reasons why Eddie Howe will leave us, and they've said, oh, he's lost his big champion in the boardroom, which was Amanda. And it's absolutely true that Amanda was a big champion of Eddie in the boardroom. But Darren Eales loves Eddie, Darren Eales is close to Eddie, and really believes in him, so that there is that love and bond. What I'm anxious for is that a bond develops between Eddie Howe and Mitchell, the new guy, because there was a working relationship between Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth, but they were never completely close. And you can well say that doesn't matter, and to a certain extent it doesn't, but it's half a help if you are. The bond was never huge. So losing Dan Ashworth was no problem to Eddie Howe. But if Newcastle are going to be successful, Howe and the new guy have got to go together. That partnership for me is as vital as the partnership between Bruno and Big Joe and our midfield on the pitch. They need a partnership together to get the best players in, to be on the same page, not to sell the players that Eddie wants to keep, and to get the ones Eddie wants in. Because it's no good signing a wonderful player if Eddie then doesn't pick him because he doesn't fancy him. You've got to be on the same page. Your director of football and the manager have got to be on the same page. And that's what they've been doing this week in Germany. Eddie Mitchell went out there with the squad so that they could have these bonding sessions every day and flash out where we need to go in the transfer market. And my hope is that they get a great understanding. But Eales, who is very close to Mitchell, I mean, he had a lot to do with the appointment of the new guy. I'm hoping he can weld the two of them together, because if it becomes the Three Musketeers, we're in business.
The word of advice I would always give to somebody at Newcastle United in ownership, and bearing in mind I've commented on Newcastle, and not as long as you two guys, but I've commented on them 30 odd years now, and is just make sure the communication is there, whether it's good or bad news. And if something goes wrong with ticketing, or something goes wrong with a player going out and fans are up in arms, don't hide under a rock. Come out and explain the reason why, like Kevin Keegan did all those years ago about the sale of Andy Cole to Manchester United. At the time, it was a huge shock. And I know that was Kevin wearing his heart on his sleeve, and but communication is the key. But it's no good communicating and getting a pat on the back when things are going well. You must come out and speak when things aren't going so well, and don't hide behind fan advisory boards and meetings that most of the fans aren't privy to. Come out and just speak to us. That's all Newcastle fans want. And if you do that, it'll cut the speculation, it'll cut the rubbish that we see on social media, it'll end it. So that communication's key. And I think towards the back end of their reign, Amanda and Mirdad, whether that just wasn't their remit, whether whether they weren't going to come out and say anything, but there was the Wembley Cup final that we had at the Carabao Cup 2 seasons ago. There was massive issues with tickets. The club was silent. They didn't come out and say anything. And something like that just gets nipped in the bud. But never mind. We move on. It's a new era in the sense that we've got new Amanda and Mirdad now, and it's, as I say, Darren Eales and co. So we wish them well, and we hope that Newcastle United are very successful this season. We've got a question for John. He says, can you name the 4 subs in the Fairs Cup final at home, Gibbo? He says, I was at the final and I was surprised that there were 4 subs at that time.
Bloody hell, there's a terrific question.
Could be some homework for next week, that, John.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get the old book out and find the answer to that. Off the top of my head, no. And I mean, we couldn't have put 4 subs on in those days.
No, but weren't they allowed
1961.
to name 4 subs, John? And then
put
you
on-
could use 2 of them or something like that.
Must have, yeah. In the way now, you name 9 subs and put on 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
Throwing all the balls.
Sure. And it was sort of covering forwards, midfield, defence, and goalkeeper. Yeah.
But it's a fun question, that, and that's an intriguing one from my point of view, because I never looked beyond what was on.
There's your homework. Dean,
I mean, if you remember, sorry to put in, Steve, if you remember the famous thing in the final, forgetting just the home leg, which the gentleman was on about because he was obviously there. In the away leg, we did put one of our subs on, a lad called Alan Fogan, who ran half the length of the pitch and scored the winning goal on the night. So we Joe used subs very brilliantly there. But Alan Fogan went on as a sub in Budapest, if you remember, and ran from the halfway line. I remember Alan Hardacre, who was at the final, who ran the league at the time. You remember Alan Hardacre?
I do, yes.
I remember him saying that because Alan Fogan had all this floppy hair, that bounced about when he ran down the field. And Alan Hardacre said to me, he said, Gibbo, if George Best had scored that goal, it would have been talking about it for the rest of history. Because he looked a bit, with the floppy hair, he looked a bit like a Beatle. He was a bit more rotund, was our Alan, and Best he was. But he could half fly, he was quick, and he scored a super goal. And he was a sub that day. So, yeah, super subs did exist.
Yeah,
and he's there at most games these
days.
He
is, Malcolm.
Yeah,
upstairs in the Moncur suite. In the Moncur suite, isn't he? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, always good to see Alan. I usually see him on a match day myself, top bloke as well. Dean says he agrees with me what I said about Darren and Amanda. He says we'll forgive anything as long as we're told what's going on. I hope the club will do well without Amanda. I agree, Steve, but then remember when Darren Neal's got pelters after speaking in January about PSR restricting our ability to sign players and player trading being necessary, who only told us the truth. And yesterday I got 40-1 on Michael Carrick for the next England manager. You heard it here first, Paul. Michael Carrick.
At 40-1 is only a good price if he gets a job. It's not a good price if you put a bet on and it doesn't happen.
I want to ask you about strips, lads. This will be the second strip. Footyheadlines.com came out and released some pictures of it at the weekend. It's a rehash, of course, of an old Adidas classic with the purple and blue on. David Ginola, of course, back in the 90s, wore that in the days of the Entertainers. But what do you think of that strip, Mal? And did you have a favourite strip that you played in?
I did actually, and what it was it was pretty much on what Brazil used to wear, which was a yellow top, but instead of having green shorts, and we had green trim on the shirts, but we had sky blue shorts.
That was Newcastle United, wasn't it? Yes, I remember that.
Absolutely, it was, John. Yeah. And I can give you one of the reasons why I so enjoyed that top, because wearing black and white stripes, you look across the pitch, you glance across, and the black and white stripes disappear into the crowd. Whereas the yellow strip, it stood out, and you knew for sure where all of your teammates were. But black and white stripes, sort of 30, 40 yards away, just blended into the crowd behind.
I tell you what, when Hibby got the ball on the left wing and crossed it in the box, he didn't look for a black and white shirt. He knew you would be on the end of it. So there was no need to look along the line then. It was telepathic. On that shirt, Steve, that you've just shown, the interesting thing, just a little story, and you were saying it was back to the Ginola days and that. I remember I owned Gateshead at the time, and John Hall's Cameron Hall Developments had become my main sponsors because of the help I had given John and the Magpie Group in getting the takeover at Newcastle. So they give me a pre-season friendly with Newcastle United. Now everybody thought they're going to send the reserves across. It's a usual thing, a crowd of 1,500. So John got Kevin Keegan to put out, because the fans would believe Kevin Keegan, I am going to send my first team over to Gateshead. And we sold out the Gateshead International Stadium at 11,750 within 24 hours. The 11,000 were Newcastle United fans, and the 750 were ours. We sold them out within 24 hours. And the most amazing thing is that Newcastle in those days, as you will remember, Steve, they played all the pre-season friendlies away from home. So they hadn't played at St. James's Park at all. So the nearest they were going to get to a home game was to play at the Gateshead International Stadium, just across the Tyne. So they had that strip on that day, and it was the first appearance on Tyne's side of Les Ferdinand and David Ginola. Can you imagine that playing against us? I mean, they were 4 up after 5 minutes, and then they got the cigars out and they scored 2 in the 85th and 86th minute. And I told our lads, if we get a corner, boys, I want you to do a lap of honour around the running track for getting the corner, because we're not going to wait for a goal. We'll have a lap of honour on a corner. But it was a wonderful day, and they were in that strip. And I've got those pictures upstairs in my study here to this day of our team playing against Ferdinand and Ginola, and we are in black and white because our strip at Gateshead was an all-white top and black shorts, and Newcastle United were in the strip you've just shown. So for me, there's a lot of happy days with that strip.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of happy days. We're not sure when that strip's coming out, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, isn't it? Son of THC, he says, speaking of shirts, is it just me or should red be banned from the club shirts? It's in reference to the red training kit. It's not red, it's burgundy or maroon. That's what I'll say to that one. He says, inside the red spectrum, crimson red. Lots of people debating that. Lads, been great to reunite you. Great to get you back together. Lots coming up, of course, over the course of the next few weeks. Friendlies coming fast and furious. We're just over a week away now from our first friendly down at Hull City. Hopefully some ins and outs. I just want to finish off, John. Any rumours that you can put to bed, or any players that Newcastle have been linked with or not been linked with in the last week since we spoke?
Well, it's very interesting because, as I mentioned before, Steve, the idea of getting away to Germany, to the Adidas headquarters, and the new director of sport going out as part of the setup was for him to hold a series of think tanks with Eddie Howe this week about what should be done before the transfer deadline arrives. And what I'm pleased about is that Eddie Howe was pushing Mitchell and saying, I want, if at all possible, 2 new signings in before we go to Japan, which is the end of the month, isn't it? Yeah. And that's interesting because that's a short time scale, if you like, between now and then, because he wants, in an ideal world, he wants to take the 2 new players with him to Japan, together with the Bournemouth fullback, etc. Bed them in, get to know how we play tactically, get to know the rest of the players, because living together 24/7 is a wonderful way to do that, and that's what we're doing in Japan. So he wants the 2 signings. If they don't come before then, we will continue to push for them. But he's pushing to try to get them as quick as that. Now, it hasn't come out what the 2 are that he wants, but we're quite obviously, we know what they are position-wise, because he wants an outside right and he wants a right-sided centre-half. So he's pushing for those 2 guys to come in before they go to Japan. Funny enough, there'll be fans that will then say, well, what about the centre-forward? Well, if it's up to Eddie, Eddie's pushing to keep Callum Wilson. He realises he may be sold by the club because this is the last time you'll ever be able to cash in on him age-wise. His contract is up after next season. But Eddie would happily go with him as the cover centre-forward to Isak if the club will keep him on the books. And it may well be, if the club spend money on an outside right in a centre half, that they'll be happy not to have to spend money on a centre forward as well. So keep a lookout for us signing 2 players, hopefully before Japan, and they will be in those 2 positions, outside right and centre half.
Great stuff. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, please. I will be back with Supermac and Gibbo, of course, next week. And back with the amigos, 5 o'clock tomorrow. Take care, guys.
Indeed. All the best, guys.
Bye, fellas.